My name is Stephanie, and I'm 32 years old. I still remember the exact smell of that morning: cold linoleum floors, instant oatmeal, and something chemical, like bleach mixed with old wood. I was 7 years old, sitting on a plastic chair in a hallway that felt 10 miles long, holding a garbage bag with everything I owned inside it. A stuffed rabbit with one eye missing. 2 pairs of socks. A small photo of my family that I had ripped from my mother's bulletin board the night before, when no one was looking. My parents had separated the year before. Not quietly, not gently, the way some families fall apart slowly like old paper. Ours fell apart like glass hitting concrete. Loud, sudden, and with pieces everywhere. My father had started seeing someone else. My mother had started drinking. And somewhere in the chaos of 2 people destroying each other, 3 children got caught in the middle. My brother Marcus was 10. He had my father's eyes and my mother's stubbornness, and she claimed him like a prize in a war she was determined to win. My sister Renee was 5, small and sweet and easy to love. My father took her. Maybe because she was the youngest. Maybe because she looked like him. I never got a clear answer, and, honestly, I stopped looking for one a long time ago. That left me. Stephanie. The middle child. The one who apparently didn't fit neatly into either parent's new life. My mother said she couldn't handle 2 children on her own. My father said his new girlfriend wasn't comfortable with more than one. Those were the explanations I pieced together later, from fragments of conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. At 7 years old, all I understood was that my brother got into one car, my sister got into another, and I got walked through a door that smelled like bleach and old wood, and that door closed behind me. The woman at the front desk had kind eyes and a lanyard with her name on it, Mrs. Patterson. She gave me a cup of apple juice and told me I was going to be okay. I didn't believe her. But I drank the juice anyway because I hadn't eaten since the morning before. The orphanage, they called it a group home, but we all knew what it was in a small town in Ohio. There were 11 other kids there when I arrived. Most of them had stopped crying about it. I hadn't learned that skill yet. I cried every night for the first 3 months, quietly, with my face pressed into a pillow so my roommate wouldn't hear. Her name was Deja, and she was 9, and she'd been there 2 years already. One night she rolled over in the dark and said, "It gets quieter." Not better. Just quieter. That was the most honest thing anyone told me in that entire place. I stayed at that group home until I was 14. 3 families considered adopting me over those years. 2 changed their minds before it was finalized. The 3rd got pregnant and decided they wanted a baby instead. I learned not to unpack my feelings too quickly after that. I learned to keep a small part of myself in reserve, something no one could take back or return. What I also learned, slowly, painfully, and then eventually with something close to purpose, was how to survive without anyone choosing me first. How to build something from nothing. How to become someone who didn't need to be rescued because rescue wasn't coming, and waiting for it was just another way of staying stuck. That lesson cost me everything. And it gave me everything too. But the real story, the part that brought me here, to this moment, talking to you, starts about 18 months ago, when my phone rang, and I looked down and saw a name I hadn't spoken out loud in over 20 years. It was Marcus. I stared at that name on my screen for a long time. Marcus. My brother. The boy who got into my mother's car while I stood in a hallway holding a garbage bag and a one-eyed rabbit. I hadn't spoken to him since I was 19. When we'd had one awkward phone call that lasted 11 minutes and ended with both of us promising to stay in touch, a promise neither of us kept. And now here he was, lighting up my phone screen on a Tuesday afternoon while I was sitting in the corner office of the company I had built from nothing. I let it ring. 5 minutes later, he called again. I let it ring again. 10 minutes after that, the phone rang a 3rd time, but this time it wasn't Marcus. It was a number I didn't recognize, with an Ohio area code. I answered it without thinking, and the voice on the other end stopped me cold. It was my mother. She sounded older. Softer around the edges in a way I wasn't prepared for. She said my name like it was something fragile, like she was afraid I might hang up if she said it wrong. I almost did. My hand actually moved toward the end button, and then something, stubbornness, curiosity, or maybe just that old wound that never fully closed, made me stay on the line. She said she'd seen an article about me. A business magazine had run a profile 2 months earlier about women under 40 who had built companies from the ground up without investors or family backing. I had been on the cover. I hadn't thought much about it at the time, but apparently my mother had seen it at her doctor's office, sitting in a waiting room in the same small Ohio town where she'd handed me over to a stranger with kind eyes and a lanyard. She said she'd read it 3 times. She said she'd cried. She said she was proud of me. I sat with that word for a moment. Proud. I had spent 25 years building a life without her pride, without her presence, without her. And now she was offering it to me like a gift, like it was something I still needed. I told her I had a meeting in 10 minutes. She asked if we could talk again soon. I said I'd think about it, and I hung up, and then I sat in my office and looked out the window at the city below. And felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not anger, not sadness, but something heavier and more complicated than either. It was grief, I think. Grief for the 7-year-old girl who would have given anything to hear those words, and grief for the woman she became because she never did. Over the next 3 weeks, the calls kept coming. Marcus called 4 more times. Renee found me on email, my sister, who I had last seen when she was 5 years old and getting into our father's car. She sent a long message, carefully worded, full of apologies and explanations and a photograph of herself that I must have read and reread 20 times, looking for the 5-year-old in her face. My father called once, left a voicemail, and didn't call again. I didn't respond to any of them right away. Not because I was punishing them, though I'd be lying if I said that thought didn't cross my mind, but because I genuinely didn't know what I wanted. I had built my life around the absence of these people. My drive, my discipline, my refusal to quit when things got hard, all of it had roots in that hallway, that garbage bag, that closed door. They had made me who I was by leaving. And now they wanted back in. And I had to decide, completely on my own, whether letting them in would heal something or just reopen it. I eventually met Marcus for coffee on a Saturday morning in November. He was 45, graying at the temples, with our father's eyes, just like I remembered. We sat across from each other and talked for 4 hours. He told me he hadn't known, not fully, what had happened to me. He said our mother had told him I'd been taken in by a good family right away. He believed her because he was 10 and didn't know to question it. When he found out the truth in his 20s, he said he didn't know how to face me. So he didn't. And years turned into more years, and silence became its own kind of habit. I believed him. Not because the explanation was perfect, but because I recognized that particular kind of avoidance. I'd practiced it myself plenty of times. I met Renee the following month. She flew in from Seattle. She hugged me at the airport before I could decide whether I wanted to be hugged, and she held on long enough that eventually I stopped being stiff about it. She had built a good life too. A daughter of her own, 7 years old, the same age I was when everything broke. That detail hit me harder than I expected. My father I have not met yet. His voicemail sits undeleted on my phone. I listen to it sometimes, not often. Maybe someday. Not yet. My mother and I talk on the phone every few weeks now. It is not easy and it is not healed, and it is not the relationship I would have chosen. But it is something. And I have learned to hold it carefully, the way you hold something that matters but could still break. Here is what I want you to take from this. Whoever you are watching this right now, whatever you were left with, whatever door closed behind you, whatever car drove away without you in it, your story does not end at the hardest moment. It starts there. Every single thing I built, every morning I got up and kept going when I had every reason not to, every time I refused to let the worst thing that happened to me be the last thing that defined me, that was my answer to that hallway. That was me at 32, still talking back to that 7-year-old moment and saying, "You did not finish me." I let the phone ring for 30 minutes that first day. And then I picked it up. Not for them. For me. Because I got to decide what happened next. And so do you.